In April 2008, former Nokia CEO called the iPhone a niche product. This is about a year after the iPhone launched. The headlines in the newspaper weren't, "Nokia CEO is crazy or blind." You know why. And during that time, Nokia was selling more phones every week than Apple had sold in the year since it launched the iPhone. I remember a few years ago when my friends started talking about forget about talking, when they started buying and selling Bitcoin. I thought to myself, they're crazy. Bitcoin? It has no intrinsic value. Not true. Neither does any of our paper money. But still, isn't that the money the geeks use to buy drugs? Blockchain? I never heard of it. About a month ago, I read that the hotel industry is still debating whether or not Airbnb is a significant threat to their business. Right. Uber, Lyft, come on. Seriously? BlaBlaCar? None of us saw this coming. How is it that talented people keep on missing and being surprised by these events? This is how. Both pictures are me, of course. It is the overconfidence that comes from being as blind as a bat, in my case also a little bit drunk, and being convinced that we can see just fine. You know, I talked to business leaders before I prepared this talk, and I asked them, what do you guys think about disruption and how it affects your business? And they consistently said that disruption is a serious phenomenon and that we should all be very worried about it or at least address it. But they also said basically the same thing. I am not worried because my industry is incremental. Disruption is not really my problem, not yet at least. Right, again, good luck with that. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about innovation, disruption, and what we all must do together in order to address it head-on, manage it, and engage it. Are you ready? Let's go. So, my name is Shahar Larry, and in 2005, I became an innovation consultant. It was pretty awesome. From a sandal-wearing philosophy student in the Tel Aviv University, I found myself in a suit, flying all over the world, working with Fortune 500 companies on amazing innovation projects. I led a team of international experts in 2010 in the BP catastrophe in the Gulf of Mexico. I helped invent new products in pharma, medical devices, consumer product goods, food and beverages, you name it. Did I mention it was awesome? And then I had a moment of clarity. About a year ago, June 8th, 2015, former CEO of Cisco, John Chambers, said, in 10 years, over 40% of Fortune 500 companies would no longer be here. Now I have to tell you a small secret. This quote, this statistics that is often quoted, I researched it and it's made up, like many statistics. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that I believed him. And two very serious things became clear that morning. The first one was that my clients, the corporations, were hopelessly slow. I would help invent products, amazing products really, that would take 2 long years to reach the market. By the time they reached the shelf, they were already obsolete. The second thing I realized is that I could not remember a single project out of many, many dozens that resulted in anything that was significantly different from what the company was already doing. When sometimes radical, disruptive ideas did come up, they were buried, as one of my clients said, a true story with a graceful funeral. I thought, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not a very good consultant. So it turns out it wasn't just me. The famous Harvard professor Clayton Christensen wrote about it in 1995, The Innovator's Dilemma, then published as a book in 1997. then wrote about it in The Innovator's Solution in 2000. In fact, he hasn't stopped talking about it since. And he isn't the only one. Many serious people consistently describe corporate innovation as practically unable to focus on anything but improvements to their existing offering. Now, I'm not saying that corporations cannot ever come up with disruption. I mean, clearly, my life changed forever after I had my first cherry tomato. What I am saying is that since the invention of the first modern cherry tomato in 1973, 2 years before I was born, 17 other groundbreaking, totally radical, disruptive, looks about the same cherry tomatoes were invented, including these two. These are real products. Corporate innovation is similar to inventing a new type of room with a private gramophone on board the Titanic. Certainly adds to the experience, but it does very little for avoiding icebergs at night. So, let's take stock. It's a little bit depressing, I know, but everything is changing really, really fast. Corporations are way too slow. Chances of them becoming super agile speedboats are basically slim to none. They consistently underestimate disruption because, first of all, they either think they're immune to it, and let me tell you a secret, nobody's immune, or they think they will be able to adapt fast enough if it hits them, and I don't think they will. So, with this dark picture, thank you very much. This is my talk. Didn't fool you, huh? About a year ago, this is where I would end my talk. I was really depressed. My wife is in the audience, she can tell you about it. I thought about changing career again. But there's a famous joke, maybe you've heard it. What is the difference between a Jewish mother and a Rottweiler? The Rottweiler lets go of the kid in the end. So my mother taught me well, and I decided not to let go and find a way to help organizations deal with disruption and actually harness it in order to create value. But before we go into that, we should probably understand what we're talking about when we say disruption, because disruption is a very confusing name. If you think about it, disruption feels like something that we can surmount, something that we can just skip over and maybe transform. But actually, disruption means very many different things to many different people. This is my definition. A surprise change of the rules that make existing value creation strategies ineffective. Now I know what you're thinking. I am special. I will not be surprised. My strategy is flexible. I'm connected to the startup scene. Right, wonderful, you're very clever. So, I asked a young but very senior innovation manager executive in one of the world's largest banks, how do you select candidates to your famous open innovation program? It's a true story. And she said, I look for companies I think will add the most value to our current business. Now, I suggested that if disruption is always surprising, perhaps what you should be looking for are actually companies she least expects will add value to her business. She immediately agreed. They hired me. Within 3 weeks, we changed their entire open innovation program. They actually reached out to a couple of startups that they rejected the year before. I just got news that they recruited them back in. They're doing amazingly. They're super happy. No, actually, something totally different happened. After a disturbingly long pause in the phone call, she said, I understand, Larry, I understand what you're saying. And it makes perfect sense. But I can't imagine I'll ever be able to do that. It would just not fly. I think the tough questions we must all ask ourselves is how committed are we in exploring what we are confident is either highly improbable or completely stupid. This is the complete opposite of the corporate innovation state of mind. Think about corporate innovation like this. Moving from what we know, which is basically what we're doing now, into what we know that we don't know, which is better performance, more features, cheaper price. Samsung, for example, constantly wants to improve its battery, its smartphone battery. It always looked for a way to create a smaller, better capacity, thinner battery. It knows it might not know how to do it today, but the minute they find a clever way of doing that, they'll launch a slightly better product, and we will all rush out and buy it. Disruptive innovation is different. Disruptive innovation comes from the much bigger space of what we don't know that we don't know, which is basically why it's so surprising. McKinsey advised AT&T not to enter the mobile market in one of the greatest blunders ever, because they projected that by the year 2000 there will be only 1 million users. There were over 100 million. Gartner predicted in 2009 that by 2012, Symbian will become the leading mobile operating system. Symbi what? You see the problem? If corporations can't see disruption coming, how can they prepare for it? Now, the simple answer is that they can't, but it is still possible. Over the past year, I've been developing a framework called Elastic Innovation. You might be able to see it's not a typo. There is no trademark. It's open source, available online. If you want to see it, reach out to me and I'll send you a link. It's actually also adapting, and people are changing it all the time. It has 4 simple steps to it, and I'm going to go over them right now. Yeah, we had a project on Saturday. So, the first step is called to know. It is about creating a small, benevolent NSA, an intelligence unit. People that are focused on exploring and mapping potential sources of disruption. Not only companies, could be researchers, communities, could be a kid in Ohio, it doesn't matter. In this case, the intelligence officers are called Shai and Ziv, and they're also a little bit of disruptors. The next step is called to bet. In betting, what we do is we clear the map and only leave on the map the ones that we want to work with. We select them, and we connect to them. That's Shai. She's not shy. We select these organizations, and the reason we do this is basically the same reason you guys have life insurance. Nobody buys life insurance because we think we're going to die. We buy life insurance because we know, not from personal experience, I hope, that people do tend to die every now and then, and sometimes unexpectedly. Well, this is basically the same thing, only for businesses. What we are protecting ourselves is a sudden, potentially deadly change in our business environment by betting on potential disruptors. The next step is called to grow. We invest in the disruptors that we've selected, and we help them grow. We help them develop. We invest small amounts and few resources, so we keep them hungry and driven. We connect them to each other, and we control the information flow from and to the mothership. This stage includes incubators, accelerators, mentorship, POC packages, anything that you need to grow an idea from a nascent idea into a proof of concept and all the way to accelerating it into the market. Not all of the disruptors will survive this stage. The final stage is called to realize. By this point, the corporation, the mothership, should have a significant stake in the few disruptors that survived. Now, disruptors act slightly differently, or maybe very differently, from the way the corporation does. So some of them we can integrate and absorb into the organization, while some of them we might need to allow to accelerate independently. So, now for the secret sauce. For this to work, the intelligence unit, the betting process, the work done with the disruptors and the disruptors themselves, all have to be autonomous and insulated from the mothership. This is what I meant when I said they can't do it, but it can still be done. The reason corporations can't do it is because they lack perspective. They lack the ability to see into what they don't know that they don't know. But these organizations have a different perspective, and they know different things. So by externalizing the management of disruption to organizations and people outside the organization, we insulate them from the biases of the corporation. So, to sum up, all you need to remember is this. It's a fairly simple recipe. You surround your organization, your corporate, with a diverse network of disruptors. You connect them to each other, you insulate them from the mothership. You control the flow of information into the mothership and from the mothership. The mothership is free to continue on its current trajectory, innovating and milking its existing market. The disruptors will try. Some will succeed. When they do, they will either buy time for the mothership to circle back, or they will grow so fast the mothership won't matter anymore. Know this. We are all ideally positioned to miss disruption when it hits our organization. The people that missed it before us, they too went here. They too were smart and confident. We are not special. If we are to transition into disruption, we first of all must acknowledge our limitations. I know it is not easy to act from a position of not knowing, but I believe that we all must. I want to end this talk with a quote of one of my favorite philosophers, Ludwig Wittgenstein, who said, "If no one ever did silly things, nothing intelligent would ever get done." We set out to transition organizations into disruption. We can't do this alone. I am calling you. If this speaks to you, you should speak to us and join the first of its kind community and open source database for practical tools and frameworks that will help organizations ride the dragon that is disruption. Thank you very much.